Hello and welcome to Higher Thinking on Higher Ed. I am Sharlyn Carrington of Content Strong Communications, the communications and marketing partner of choice for universities and colleges and nonprofits. And today I am excited to continue diving into the trends and the challenges encountered by leaders in higher ed. And I am honored, so honored to welcome Dr. Roberta M. Harris to the hot seat today. Roberta is Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at Monroe College. And Roberta has a background in global marketing at major corporations like Time Inc. and Coach. She brings deep industry insight to academic leadership. She is also a passionate mentor and president of the Northeast STEM Starter Academies Board. You tell me if anything has changed after this, Roberta. Expanding access to STEM careers for youth in Westchester County. Thank you again so much for bringing your expertise to this conversation. How are you doing?
Sure, doing well, Charlotte. Happy to be here and to share my insights and my experience. I've had an interesting journey, lots of excitement as of late, but I've actually, if I had to redo my career trajectory, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm glad I took the path that I took. I look back and sometimes question, oh, maybe I should have done this and that. I said, nope, it happened the way it was meant to. And so it kind of led me to where I am today and looking forward to doing even more. So again, excited to be here with you and thanking you for inviting me to participate.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I do like to spend, as you've heard, I'd like to spend a little time talking about, your background and stuff. But my first question is always situate us a little bit, right? Like give us a little bit of the context of your world. I mean, you bring some of the places I mentioned, you bring a corporate marketing expertise into
Mhm.
your academic leadership at Monroe.
Yeah,
How does your background really shape the way you lead, graduate programs and support
yeah.
cross-disciplinary growth?
I think when I think about my experience in higher ed as a student, the one thing that I remember very distinctly is that I always felt that students were a necessary evil. Students
Right,
were not a priority. And
right,
I think because I have the marketing background, the first thing I began to think about coming into higher ed was who is our audience? Who are we serving?
right.
Who is this service for? And because of that, we can't lose sight. We can't get so caught up, oh, we have to do this and organize this program and this committee. At the end of the day, how is this serving our audience, the
Right.
students? If this doesn't serve them in a way that's meaningful for them and that appeals to them, we're not going to get very far. And I remember again feeling like, they're not doing this for us. They're doing this to serve faculty. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just to keep things in perspective in terms of who we're serving at the end of the day. And I think coming from the marketing background, focusing on meeting the needs and wants of customers, coming into higher ed, that switch from customers to students. And I think coming in for that perspective and not from a traditional academic background is what helps me always to stay in focus with whatever we're doing, whether we're launching a new degree program, going through accreditation and all of that. That student is the center of everything of my thought process when I'm working with folks and developing different things to build different priorities or serve different different committees, etc. It's always about the student. That's the focal point of everything we do.
I think that's a really, really good point. It's certainly well taken. I think as I've had some of these conversations over the past few months, certainly people have echoed that. Like students should be at the forefront of everything that we do. And then you have, and really depending on where other people sit across an institution, of course, but then you have the people who are like, but we have to, balance what we need to, say to donors, and we have to balance, the
Yeah.
board to balance the employers that we're working with and partnering with on certain things. This is kind of an out-of-pocket question, but I wonder if you think about that as well, and if that becomes a challenge even in your role as you think about the academics portion of it.
Sure, sure. It is a challenge, but it's something, as you said, when you maintain a balanced approach. So, as I said, even though students are the focal point, there are a whole lot of other stakeholders that are in the mix that are around directors, your faculty, the parents. People forget about the parents as being a stakeholder as well, the community, because we don't operate in a bubble, we don't operate in a silo. There are other people and donors that are affected by what we do that need to understand our message. So when we
Right.
develop these things, we have to speak to them as well. So, we talk about, the students and the programs we offer, the parents want to know things like, okay, well, how safe is it where my child is going to, live? Or
Right.
if my child does this major, what kind of job is he going to get? Because I'm investing in his or her education. I need to know what your track record is of getting, students being able to position themselves for opportunities. A donor
Right.
is going to say, whether it's an alumni donor or an ex-donor donor, wants to know how you're going to serve the community and how you're going to continue to deliver. Faculty wants to know, how am I going to continue to position myself in the world that I operate in, connecting with other faculty at conferences. I need the opportunity to do research or do community events, etc. So faculty is a piece of this as well. And again, the board of directors of board, the trustee board members who are kind of overlooking the college, looking at the strategic direction, they need to understand what we're doing as well. So it's really diving in deep to serve all those multifaceted audiences who have different motivations for being connected to the college, making sure that they understand the mission, where we're headed, that they're in agreement with it, and if not, to talk about it. Openness is very important because very often, we may internally be seeing things another way, one way rather, but then somebody on the outside looking in, like a donor or an alumni may say, you know what, this is what's happening in the real world. You got to be connected to what's you're there in your bubble with your students, and this is not what's happening. So being open to hearing those ideas and suggestions. Even the folks who are on the team for business and IT, they have like advisory boards who are people that volunteer. They work in industry. Once a semester, they meet with them to say, what's happening in industry? Are our courses aligned with that? What types of jobs would students get? What kind of certifications do they need? What skills are employers looking for? But always having that eye on what's happening in the real world by having those stakeholders involved to keep you connected, because you could very easily get caught up in your internal focus and not knowing what's happening in the world. And the industry and businesses are changing very rapidly, and the changes are significant. It's not things that are happening, a little bit here, a little bit here. They're disruptive, and they're immediate, and there are no holes barred. And our curriculum needs to reflect what's happening, because that positions our students when they graduate for success. And again, if we're too internally focused and not looking at all those other stakeholders, then we miss the mark. But that narrow focus just doesn't work anymore. It's got to be that broad outlook on things, and that becomes important. That is important, rather. So those external players become very important in helping us to move forward and do what we do.
Right. And I think once again, you touched on my next question, which is always what's going on in the sector? What is shifting in the world right now that is impacting your role specifically, but also, across the board, how it's impacting the way you deliver programs to students, the way that they learn. Talk a little bit about that for me.
Yeah, well, there's lots that's going on. I'll start first with flexibility. Students are looking for flexible curriculums, not just flexible in terms of modality, on-site versus hybrid. Some people want to kind of be in your face, but then also be asynchronous as well. There are people that only want to be fully online. And college is getting smart about doing that. But when I say flexibility, it now comes down to students wanting a customized curriculum. So your curriculum has to be flexible enough for them to pick and choose what they want, and not pigeonhole them into, you got to get this, you got to get that. And colleges who are missing that mark are losing students. Their enrollments are going down. They offer these degrees, but they might be a certificate someone wants, a digital badge, just kind of thinking more openly. And the fact that the folks that are before us today who want to get a credential may not necessarily want to get the traditional degree. What else will be able to offer them? I think that what colleges need to do is what marketers do: start creating personas, right? Don't just find, oh, this is our target audience. No, go deeper than that. Create customized personas of who your audience is, and then develop your programs based on that. Years ago, and to some degree today, folks are still doing it the opposite way. But we actually have to focus on who the market is that we want to serve, develop those personas, and then create those different flexible, customized programs for students, and then market it. Tell them about it. Say, this is what we have, and be focused about marketing that product, that service that you're offering. Because at the end of the day, that credential, it is a product. It's a service. You're offering services. Education is a service. And most people said, oh, well, no, there should be a separation between business and higher ed. No, there shouldn't. I don't come from that world. And when I initially started in higher ed many years ago, that was the overwhelming mindset. But that has changed as competition increased from online, but also other colleges opened around the country. It became easier to do. And so as a result of that, competition intensified. And so how do you stand out? Especially if you're not one of the big eight, you have to stand out. So by actually meeting students' needs, and there's some colleges that have been very good at that. Whatever you want, you can customize, and those are the ones that have been successful.
I think you've said once again so much there. I mean, the one thing that really stood out to me is that I feel like it's going to be the theme of this conversation is this
Mhm,
idea of, separation of church and state, right?
mhm.
Separation of business and higher ed. Why? There doesn't need to be a separation because that's not how the
Exactly.
world is currently. That's not reflective of what's going on in the
Exactly.
sector, but in the world as a whole. And as we
Exactly.
think about, I mean, something you mentioned, this idea that people want a customized experience. We see this across the board. This is beyond higher ed. This is in every single facet of life with any
Mhm,
product, with any service. They want something specifically tailored to them and to their needs. And we see
mhm,
that when we see, people are using AI to find the information that they
mhm.
need right up front because it's the information that they need right up front to take and do
Uh-huh.
something else with. So we see how that really
Uh-huh.
impacts,
Yep. Yep.
drives a person's ability or want to learn thing. And what you mentioned there is, the organizations and the schools that are not necessarily as agile and aren't quick to
Mm,
adopt this idea. We're seeing them kind of fall by the wayside.
right.
Uh, I mean, my question really is there, what is that what you're seeing, right? Is that what you're seeing the universities and institutions and colleges across the board that are not able to be as agile and are not able to be as flexible and respond to that personalized experience, that personalized need? And then, of course, the need in the sector, really what we're trying to do is
Mhm,
equip students to be,
mhm,
able to respond to the need and the demand that's actually out there in the workforce. As we see institutions not able to do that, we're seeing them
mhm.
kind of fall by the wayside. And
Right.
I mean, my question is really, is that what you think it's driving some of the challenges some of the other institutions are having? And is that something that I think your institution is responding against or doing the most that they can to make sure that they stave off those challenges?
Yeah, yeah, and I think, like you said, that is what's happening. There has been a shakeout. Lots of colleges that have been around for years are having to shut their doors because they can't maintain the
Right,
enrollment because they don't have the infrastructure or are not willing to make the investment to be able to respond to that. You
right,
need to be able to be agile enough to respond to changes in the market, just like any organization would.
right,
There was a time when that was not the case, but it isn't now. And the
right,
quicker you become or develop that agility, then the more successful you will be. I will tell you, my institution tends to have a very entrepreneurial flair to it, or mindset or structure. And
right,
that when things are identified that we should be responding to, committees are immediately put together to respond. It doesn't take us years to go to market with something.
right,
We try to do it within an academic year. We get our approvals and all of that. And because we have the freedom to be creative like that within our groups, outside of our groups, across our groups, etc., people work together. And I think that's one of the reasons why I transitioned well into higher ed, because I had visions of what higher ed was like when I was in corporate. And I thought,
right.
I don't know if that's someplace I want to be. Gave it a try,
Yeah,
happened to be here. And the transition was smooth for me because it was the mindset was so much like corporate America in terms of moving quickly and being responsive to the market of what's happening, et cetera. And that has continued. And as a result of that, we've been able to maintain strong enrollment. We,
right,
hit the bumps that everyone else did during COVID, but we
right,
immediately began to recover. And we, every year since COVID, we've had record-breaking enrollment because we're trying, to be as flexible as possible and keep our ear to the ground with what's happening through our faculty, through our advisory board, through just conversations with people, participating in conferences, not just academic conferences, but industry conferences on things like using AI effectively in the classroom, what's happening with AI in the classroom, and just being open-minded. And also for those who are not open-minded that are part of the group, to kind of encourage them, hey, you got to get with the program because this is the right direction we're going in, and we need you to be part of this too if you still want to be connected with this organization, because this is how we're doing things. And I will tell you,
right,
AI usage is something that students are doing. This is
right.
not something that we can ignore. They are going
No,
into ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot and all the other platforms that I'm not even aware of and I'm trying to become aware of
yeah,
to get work done. So we're just trying to teach them how to do it responsibly. We're saying,
Right.
"No, you're going to use it, but if you're going to, here's what I want you to do. Take me through your process. What did you get at the end? Did you look into that to verify or, to see whether or not AI was just hallucinating? Did you go read that
Right.
article to see if it tied in or if it's not a real article? Because sometimes it's not. Just
Right.
helping them to use that because admittedly, when they go through and they get all that information and they verify it, in order for them to do what they have to do, they do have to read it. So
Yeah,
when they
they
read it
do.
and then they're able to summarize it, that's where the learning is happening. So some folks are convinced that students are using AI, so they're not learning. But if you do
Right.
it in a way that's effective and productive for them, they will learn, but they're learning differently now because their whole approach to it is different. Reading a textbook, I have to tell you, we have textbooks, but they aren't necessarily reading it. If they are, they
They're
might
not.
read it to get what they need after they've already gone through AI and got some information and they need to fill in a gap. Then they'll go
Right.
look at the chapter. They'll skim it and
Right.
run through it, but they're getting their information from the internet. And I think we've only scratched the surface in higher ed with how we're going to be able to utilize that in a way that will benefit students in the way that they learn now. But
Right.
I am definitely open to learning more about that. I just attended a seminar at Harvard that sponsored in doing these kinds of things a couple of months ago. It was just inspiring all the things you can do. What I came back and did it doesn't even scratch the surface for what I want to do, but I took lots of notes.
Right.
And we want the people around us in our institution to think the same way. Many of them are. And they're coming saying, how can I do this? Can I do that? Our marketing professor is like all over using AI with the students and they're loving the class because he's like, yeah, you're using it. And they're like, oh, he's giving me permission to use it? It's like, yes,
Yeah.
but here's how I want you to do it in a way that will be meaningful for you so that you'll learn something. And the more we have our classes run like that, our courses, the better off we'll be because we're meeting students where they live. And the thing is that we cannot just force this information into students in a way that we want them to learn it. They're going to push back because they don't learn that way anymore. We have to flip the switch and say, how are you learning? All right, let me tailor something to meet your needs in a way that you're going to be receptive to. Or if not, you won't engage them. They'll just check out and say, whatever, let me go on AI to get this done. And you really can't maximize what you're delivering to students when you try to fight against how they learn. You have to embrace it and figure out how to use it in a way that's responsible. And if you can't, ask for help. Somebody is
But the
on the other side learning and they can teach you
right.
how to do it.
Right. And the thing that comes to my mind is
Mhm.
not only are they using it in the classroom, they're going to be using it out in the real world. Everybody's using it in the real world. We're all using it in the
Yeah.
real world. So the
Mhm.
question is, how can you give them the tools that they need using these tools, these new AI tools that they
Yeah.
have, and be able to teach them how to apply it to their jobs that they're
Mhm.
going to get? Because that's what they're going to need when they get there in those jobs,
Yeah.
right? People want to know that you know how to write a prompt, that you know how to ask the right
Exactly.
questions, so you know how to review
Exactly.
what you've been given, that you know how to apply what
Mhm.
you've been given from a X, Y, and Z AI model, right?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
how it
Exactly.
works. So,
Because just like you said, where another one of the faculty members came to me a couple of weeks ago. She goes, there are students I see graduating with degrees in engineering that are not able to find jobs. But she said, I happened upon this really blossoming career called prompt engineering. And I said,
right,
I know what you mean. We need to make sure that we incorporate that into the curriculum so that if students want to pursue that type of career track, they have the skills to do that. So I said, you know what? Let's get a group of people together and start working on how we can take our existing courses and put those kinds of things in them so that students are ready. And this was a couple of weeks ago. We're already starting to do it. We got workshops planned for faculty to attend so they can learn how to do it because some of them are fearful. They have AI
right,
fear. They don't
right.
understand it. I'm not really taking the time to learn more about it because they're fearful. They're hearing some negative information about deep fakes and all this, Oprah and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, this is out of
Mhm.
control." Oh yeah, it is a little out of control, but there's still a pocket of it that higher ed can use and use responsibly to engage students. And the more we focus on that, again, the more students we'll reach, the better we'll be able to position them, and the better off we'll be because we'll become more proficient as prompt engineers within higher ed to be able to do what we need to do effectively. And that's the key. Doing it the old fashioned way, it's not effective. If you step into that
It's not
classroom
effective.
and you start spitting all this stuff out and tell people, all right, do your homework now, read chapter 5. Guess who's going to read chapter 5? Guess how
Right.
many students are going to do that homework assignment? You got to meet them where they live, and that's where effective instruction comes in. Meeting them where they live and understanding what that's all about, taking the time to learn about it, and then figure out how you can use it in a way that engages students.
And I think that speaks to the role of higher ed in general, right? I mean, AI is not the only new thing that has ever come to
Mhm.
higher ed. I mean, the computers, the internet, all of these
Yeah.
things were new technology that people were fearful of, and they didn't know what they would
Mhm.
mean for, higher ed and for learning and for teaching. Higher ed, the institutions have a
Mhm.
responsibility not only for their own existence, quite frankly, and their own relevance in the world, but just they had the whole point of them is to be able to learn something and to make it
Mhm.
relevant, to make it useful to students and give them the skills that they need. And
Yeah.
AI is just a new challenge, and
Exactly.
a tool, of
Exactly.
course, but it's just a new challenge amongst a very, very, very long historical story of higher
Mhm.
ed needing to figure out how to work within the confines of the new world, period, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's where some institutions are missing the mark and why they're losing students to platforms like LinkedIn,
Right,
Udemy, Coursera. They say,
right,
you know what, I can go in, customize this. They're explaining this stuff to me in a way that resonates with me. I can get a credential that employers respect because it's branded with LinkedIn or it's branded with
right.
Coursera, Udemy, et cetera. And they
It
get
costs
something
less money,
for it.
it takes
Yep.
less time.
And there
Right,
are actually organizations that are advertising on the news saying, don't invest in a degree. Why would you invest in a degree when you don't even get an investment on your return? You're
right.
just getting a credential that can't even land you the job you want. Why don't you do
Yeah,
this and that? And they're presenting those quick credentials in a way that's very enticing. And if someone were struggling to pay for a college degree, might consider that because they say, look, if I have 3 or 4 of these credentials, I am just as attracted to an employer versus someone who's invested like $100,000 in an undergraduate degree, and that is what higher ed is up against. And we have to
right,
be able to respond to that by offering things like that, but also coupling it with the infrastructure that we have in higher ed, where we kind of understand how to educate and
right.
all of that. Those are the kinds of things we have to start doing. Those short-term credentials that are meaningful to employers that
Hmm.
students can
Hmm.
earn in place of a degree. So
Right. It speaks to
mhm,
Right. It speaks to the many opportunities that there are for partnerships kind of across the board. It doesn't need to just be higher ed and institutions. There's this ability
right.
to partner with corporations and other companies beyond that to develop and deliver something that is truly
Mhm,
meaningful, specifically for to employers who are looking for skilled employees, right?
mhm.
And as you
Yeah.
talk about that, it really makes me think about, what you're looking at and what you're measuring,
Mhm.
specifically in your institution. So I think about, you definitely talked about enrollment there and looking at the enrollment numbers. Is there anything else you're measuring when you're thinking about, the work that it is that you do, really just to say, we're doing a good job here or we're not doing a good job here? What are
Yeah.
you looking at?
Definitely things like retention, and also where we're recruiting from,
Right.
directly from high schools or institutions like all around the world. Monroe has like a very grassroots, hands-on approach to
Okay.
recruitment, both locally with high schools and also internationally, meeting with ministries and governments in other countries, and setting up we measure ourselves by our partnerships as well. If our partnerships are effective in creating long-term relationships where
Right.
ministries of governments, especially in places like a lot of the island nations, where
Right.
we recruit their students as well. Sometimes they attend online because the government will sponsor them to study to earn a degree.
Right.
So we measure ourselves by the effectiveness of our partnerships, how well we retain students, how we convert students from non-degree to degree programs or from
Right.
one degree to another, associates to bachelors. All of those things we look when we measure how we do, and also outcomes. Outcomes involves 2 things: whether or not students are placed in with an employer after they graduate, that is in field
Right.
or out of field, and then also whether or not part of the outcome also is whether the student pursues a professional degree afterwards. Those are the
Right.
3 things that are in our outcomes. And so we measure ourselves by that as well. Our accreditors require that we measure ourselves by those outcomes, knowing that not everyone will necessarily go the track of getting employed when they graduate. They might want to pursue something, a higher degree. Do they have the academic performance and credential that allows them to qualify to pursue a higher degree? Because if
Right.
you have a bunch of students that earn an associate's or earn a bachelor's, but don't do well enough to be able to attend another college or university to earn a higher degree, that's a reflection on us as well, because that means that we're not preparing students for life after college, which can,
Right.
the two avenues. So all of those things are things that we look at in terms of return. I mean, even when it comes down to marketing, how many people we converted from a banner ad or from an email
Right.
campaign? How many of our alumni, when we do a campaign to advertise a new degree program that they might be interested in, how many of those we convert to come
Right.
do additional degrees? We do offer, several master's degrees, and so some of the students will come and study, take one master's degree and say, oh, I'd like to continue with my role. I know the climate, I like the culture, etc. I'll do a second degree. So we actually measure second degree conversion as well. So there's a lot in that.
Right.
Conversion, retention, successful recruitment through partnerships with governments and with organizations. We have a corporate partnership with several hundred companies where they're employers. If the student is accepted, meeting the acceptance criteria, and they're with one of our corporate partners, they get a discounted tuition. So how many people are coming from that effort? Some of them are unions like DC37 and 1199, which is the hospital union. So all of
Hmm.
those we are measuring ourselves by as well, because again, we don't operate in a silo. There are lots of people out there that
Yeah.
want to retrain their staff. And so
Yeah.
they'll come in and they'll do these courses with us at that discounted price. So they're helping us through our enrollment, but we're also helping them by helping their staff to upskill. And
Right.
so that's how we measure our success as well. So it's a lot of different dimensions we use to measure success.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ecosystem, right? It's not just, and that's
Mhm.
why I was saying that earlier. It's not just, oh, it's students, it's the partners and the employers
Yeah,
and this
yeah,
and that, and how are we impacting the community beyond just, so yeah, it's a big ecosystem.
yeah, it is.
What what's working for you? What's been working especially, I don't know, well in terms of engaging graduate students, scaling programs? Where are
Mhm.
you still seeing some friction and limitations as well?
Well, actually, I think what's working well is not losing sight of one of the things that has worked very well with Monroe, and that is the hands-on culture, where you get in
Okay.
the ground and you're not necessarily dealing with people in a very I won't say in your face because that's not it's a negative connotation, but we actually build relationships with depth with people. So when we go into the high
Right.
schools or when we meet with the governments, we actually take the time to form the strong relationship first, the hands-on, the meeting, the face-to-face, not everything done, virtual. Virtually is very convenient, but it's very often just as effective to be there physically with people and to build that relationship, to have that interaction and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think that continues to work well for us. It's actually part of the university's mission statement to still relationships build us and guide us is what the
Right.
mission of the college is. And so that actually has never gone away. We have grown enrollment wise significantly in the past few years, but no matter how big we grow, we still try to maintain those relationships with and that whole idea of how we go out building relationships in the different nation islands with the corporations that are here, with the different athletic organizations in some high schools in like Australia and other. We actually go there and meet with them or have them come in. Let's sit down and talk. What kind of student do you have? What the parents say with their student traveling to America? Getting all of that out the way. When we use agents in some markets, we actually use agents to help us recruit, not just hiring
Right.
an agency, going in and say, okay, what are you all about? What do you stand for? How do you recruit people, etc. before we do business with them, because that's our
Right.
reputation. And we want to know that
Exactly.
if you're recruiting students from Monroe, that you're carrying out the same culture we would want to carry if we were physically there. So we're not going to sign anything on the dotted line with you until we're convinced that you would help us. You would be our ears and eyes when you're dealing with these students in terms of trying to recruit them and not just being kind of collecting money and putting them anywhere. Nope. Let's see what you're all about. So I think taking the time to build those relationships. Some of the challenges we have, again, competition is intense, especially at the graduate level. It is difficult to stand out. Everybody has an MBA. How is your program different from the others? What do you offer? Everybody can have personalized attention,
Mhm.
to students, etc. So again, we still try to do what we can by offering the flexibility, developing those relationships with students, and trying to maintain that. But we still have work to do there.
Right.
We don't necessarily stand out where people, especially in the local market, the domestic market, will say, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to Monroe," because very often we do really, really well with our own alum. people who have experienced the culture, know what it's like, say, you know, I've gone someplace else, but I want to transfer into Monroe because I'm not finding this culture anywhere else. So we do
Right.
well with having our own return. But we still need to do more work on getting that external audience who has not experienced our culture to convince them that this is something we think they'll be pleased with. So we got to kind of stand out a little bit more there. And that's, again, a challenge for us, not just for our on ground, but also online, because there's a lot of competition out online. Who would choose Monroe over someone else? We need to make sure that our messages always point out why, in a way,
Right.
again, by building those personas, using language and speaking to that audience in a way that resonates with them, so they'll give us a try. And you know, and amongst all the other sea, and it's a sea of other
Right.
institutions that are
It is a
offering
C.
online MBAs, because it's easy to
Right.
do that. It's easy to start.
Yeah.
It's easy to offer credentials if you get yourself registered and you have something that people want and you put yourself online, and it's something, again, that where you can engage people and it's within their price range, they're going to go for it. And so
Yeah.
that puts the other more traditional expensive schools out of the market because you know, they have something that's attractive on a few different levels. So there's some challenges there for sure. Standing out is
Yeah. I
not
can.
easy to do nowadays. Take
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge across the board. And I think,
Mhm.
as there becomes certainly more friction or pushback against the value of higher ed as a
Yeah.
whole, you're also pushing against and that one showcasing that there is value as a whole
Mhm.
in pursuing a degree like an MBA, for example, any kind of
Yeah.
graduate degree. And then the next piece of that is saying this is what we value over the others. This is what we can
Mhm.
offer over the others, and this is what makes us so unique and so different.
Exactly. Exactly.
If we think about your next 6 to 12 months, what do you think, what are you looking towards? Is it just about finding different ways to put yourself out there, or do you have any other kind of priorities, goals, top of mind objectives that you're interested in working towards?
Yeah, so definitely, as you said, finding ways to stand out, but
Right,
also making sure that our curriculum continues to be agile and flexible. That's going to be
right,
really important. Having an ear to the ground on what other disruptions will take place and be ready to respond to that in a way that will be effective to help the institution keep going, by
right,
bringing in students based on what we know their needs are. And
right.
that is changing and changing quickly. And if we close our eyes for too long, we're going to miss it. And so just
Mm-hmm.
making sure, again, that we create a structure that allows us to be able to have someone who's always looking out, or a group that's looking out saying, hey, this is happening now. Hey, this, and then say, okay, how can we bring that into the curriculum? What new programs do we need to offer? Do we need to keep the same thing? Do we need to keep it but tweak it? Do we need to overhaul? And having people who are open-minded enough to be looking at that, and then for us to be able to respond to it, that's going to be where we're headed. Because if we don't do that, and we still our programs will go stale very easily within a
Right,
matter of a couple of semesters. So just
right,
making sure that our ears to the ground to be able to respond as we need to, and not to
right,
be uh, kind of not thinking it through, to be strategic about it, to think it through, to say, does this make sense for us, or it's just a fad or something that's going to be here today, gone tomorrow? Is this something that's
right,
going to be lasting? And if it is, how do we respond to it
right,
in a way that's
right. I
effective
think
in terms
that's
of what we offer and what's meaningful for students to prepare them? Because that's what this is all about, preparing them for careers. And if we can't speak to that, we have no message.
right. That's it. I think that is it. That is the key point. If you can't speak to that, then you have no message, right? Um, I have one last question for you. And
Sure,
my
sure.
last question is always the magic wand question. Some
Uh-huh.
people find it off-putting and some people love it.
Mhm.
If you could remove one persistent challenge in higher ed, in your ecosystem, around
Mhm.
leadership, around student support, around innovation, around equity, whatever it is, what would it be and why?
Um, would be being able to clone good people.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. I haven't heard that one. That's a good answer.
Because, yeah, when you find people that really get it, on many different levels in a balanced way, you want to
Right.
say, do you have a sister or brother or relative that's just like you,
Right.
or someone you know? Because that is difficult to find. And
It is.
that is the piece that can make or break it. People really forget, we're so focused on technology. At the end of the day, no matter how much technology we have, you have to have good people. And
Right.
people
That's it.
are an asset like nothing else will ever be. I don't care how big AI gets, without the right people and the right who fit into the culture, and can deliver things in a right way, and just kind of think open-mindedly, that is not hard to find. And when it is, you just want to multiply them if you can. So
Right.
that
Right.
would be, that's a big challenge, and it's something that I'd love to do. If cloning were in place in a good way, I'd be cloning 3 or 4 people right now that are in this room.
That is such a good answer, and it's not an answer that I've heard from anybody else I've asked this question to. But it's true, right? When you find the people that are really working for you, you want to be able to keep those people and multiply those people and use them in kind of the most strategic places that you could use them.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
you if you so assuming that you have some really good people on your team who you would love to
Mhm.
clone, what roles are they playing now, and what role would you love them to play elsewhere?
Well, some of them are terrific in the classroom, but also are really good with developing curriculum in a way that's fresh. And
Right.
so you can't overload them with classes and then say, oh, do all this stuff for me too. Oh, you want to go to a conference? Oh, that's right. You're doing your doctoral work. All right. And so
Yeah.
you don't want to put too much on the people who are really good because you'll burn them
Right.
out. And so that I would love to, again, to be able to bring in more people who kind of have all of that. And I know I'm ask for the world, who really understand the technology. I mean, there's a handful of people that connect with the students in a way that
Right.
every time I step into the classroom, virtual or in person, I literally am like on the edge of my seat, like, wow, can I take your class? And then they
Right.
come around, I'm like, you know what? There's this new thing with AI where I can create this avatar and do such and such and such. And then they're like, oh, there's a conference we can attend. So just all around, and we have a
Right.
few of them, and they are just phenomenal. And so really just keeping on top of that technology is not, again, is not an easy feat. And so the more resources we have that we can devote to that would be great. And human resources are always a challenge because you're in an
Always.
institution,
Yep.
things have to be balanced. It can't be all about this group and not that group, or this area and not that area. And so, resources are limited, technology resources, financial resources. And so, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have enough human resources. We don't have enough
Right.
financial resources. We don't have enough. So, if I had a wish list, I would say increase, let's double this resource, double set technology, finance, human, double them all, and even physical
Right.
resources. All four of those
Right.
resources, I would want double the amount that we have today, because that would
Right.
make life beautiful for me and everyone around me, and my entire team of 200 people would be very happy if we could double all four of those resources. And let's throw in informational resources too, because we need to be able to do that as well. So all
That's
five
right.
of them, we want to double, and that would be my
That's right.
perfect world.
Isn't that the dream? Isn't that the dream, Roberta? I
Yeah,
think it is.
yeah. I
Yeah.
can keep dreaming
Yeah, that's
while
it. Keep
I'm
dreaming.
while I'm making it happen. Um,
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, there are opportunities and we need to figure out how to seize them so we can make them happen. I think
exactly,
you've
and
hit the
don't
nail on
give
the
up
head.
easily. That's my thing. I
That's right.
don't give up. People know that I'm tenacious. I'm polite, but I also like, okay, I'm going to come back to you because I'm not happy with this. Is not happening yet. When's this going to happen? Oh, call me tomorrow. It's like, okay, I'll call you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I'm calling you at 1:59. We're going to get this.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, Roberta, thank you so much for sharing your
Oh,
time and your
sure.
experience and your perspective with us today. It's been such a thoughtful and generous conversation to our listeners, our watchers. I hope the episode sparked ideas, affirmed your own experiences, or helped you see a challenge in a new light. If you are a leader in higher education, communications, or marketing, or advancement, or whatever, and you want to contribute to this conversation, we'd love to hear from you because the truth is, these conversations aren't just talk. They're the start of a shared roadmap for the future of our field. So let's get to work. Thank you so much again, Roberta.
Sure. Thank you for having me.